Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. Maybe it's a relief just to be sitting down in a cool room. Hopefully you're all started. Hopefully your students are moved in, more or less. They don't have to be unpacked. Can you tell me again in the back how the volume is? Good? All right, very good. I am Gina House-Connect. I'm faculty in the English department, and I'm also the I'm the Associate Dean for Student Academics. And joining me this morning are my colleagues Barb Tupper, who is our Executive Director of External Partnerships, and she co-directs our Center for Creativity and Careers, which we're going to tell you a little bit about in a moment, and my colleague in the theater department, Susan Wolverton, who is the director of the first year experience. Before we get started on this presentation, I want to make a couple of announcements. I want to let you know that the 2 o'clock opening convocation, which is the lovely event where we welcome your students into the Kohawk family in a formal way, that will occur in Sinclair Auditorium. There will be additional seating with webcast viewing in Kessler Auditorium, which is in Kohawk Hall, and hopefully you've all picked up your parent packets and you have the campus map, and if not, someone in a red t-shirt will tell you where to go. That's kind of the rule of thumb all day long. And then after the convocation, we have our ringing of the bell ceremony by which your student becomes a Kohawk. And you will have an opportunity both to view that and take lots of pictures, and also to meet the instructor of your student's first year seminar. And then at 4 o'clock, if you don't have to hit the road right away, we welcome you to come join us in the Clark Alumni House dining room for a parent reception. And we're going to have Barb Tupper start off by talking to you a little bit about why it is that we are so glad that your student is here and what we know about the importance and value of what they're going to experience in the next 4 years.
Thank you, Gina. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. No, just still morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to Co. So glad you're here. I am myself a Co alum, so are there any other Co alums in the house? Awesome. Woo. Welcome. It's great fun to have a son or daughter join you in the tradition. I actually had a daughter graduate in May from here. She loved her experience here, and then she moved 8,000 miles away for the next year on a Fulbright to Laos. So I heard somebody say, "Hey Claire," out on the campus, and I just about lost it. But I'm okay now. But welcome. There's going to be lots of opportunities for your son or daughter to learn, to grow, to experience things here on campus, and we really want them to take total and full use of all the resources. And so we put these panels together for you today so that you could also know what some of those resources are as you're talking to your student and helping them adjust. So I know some of you have students already in college. Maybe this is your first time sending a son or daughter to college. Whichever it is for you, there are still all those feelings that come with it, whether it's the first or second or fifth or sixth. But we know college matters. We know that students who attend college and graduate from college are going to be, they're going to earn more, they're going to have higher rates than non-college graduates. So it does matter. We have lots of value proposition here, and we want you to know what those things are. Specifically, we are very passionate about the liberal arts degree, and we know that as a society, our jobs are ever changing. A job that is here now may not be here in 5 years. It may be replaced by a new job. And so the liberal arts degree specifically, and specifically on a residential campus where they're interacting with people, getting leadership opportunities outside of the classroom and things like that, we know that they're going to create those skills and hone those skills to be adaptable. so that as we all enter into the workforce, as they enter into the workforce or into graduate school, they're going to have the ability to adapt, to be flexible, to change, and to really move up within whatever career path they decide to go into. Thank you. So as part of the Center for Creativity and Careers, we have an association that we belong to called the National Association of Colleges and Employers. And they do a ton of research on college, what employers are looking for, what kinds of things college graduates, and again, specifically liberal arts graduates, develop when they're in college. And these are just some of the career readiness skills that employers look for, consistently look for, and that we can help develop within your student. I just sat in a session yesterday with our faculty about learning outcomes, and all of these things were part of the learning outcomes that we set forth and build upon in the classes, in the things they do outside the classroom. It's all there, and it's all very, very valuable for them. So specifically at CO, we are individualized. You will find resources on campus that are individual to your student. Can be, you just have to ask. If something doesn't go right, we'll help you fix it. We'll help your student fix it. That's really something that we feel very strongly about here. Transformative, we want those experiences they have to be transformative. Whether they're in the classroom, or they're an internship, or they're a volunteer experience, whatever it is that they're experiencing, we want that to be transformative for them. We also want to help students explore their strengths and interests and map out their own future. I just realized I'm standing over there and we're videotaping, so I apologize to the people who will look at this later that I was not visible. But they heard me, I'm sure. So anyway, we're helping students explore their strengths. And that's part two of what we're helping in the Center for Creativity and Careers, but not just there, across the entire campus. It really is an effort that our faculty are involved with, our staff are involved with across the entire campus. I'm going to turn it over now to Susan.
And I'll stay back in this corner, as I guess it's supposed to do. Welcome, everyone. So, going off to college, maybe some of you have already gone through this experience with a son or daughter already, but maybe this is your first time. And I have a 15-year-old, and every time this time of year, I think, closer and closer to come to this point, and I imagine myself sitting where you were sitting and how I might be feeling. And all students face challenges. Obviously, it's a life-changing event going to college, moving away from your support at home, your friends. But as you know, if you visited CO, your student has visited CO, we are the new family. And as those students face those challenges, we are there. Our huge support team is here to help them, and every student will adjust to those challenges differently, obviously. So we are attuned to how to tune into those challenges that they're facing and help them navigate. It's hard, college is hard. That's important. We want them to go to that next step of meeting those challenges, overcoming them, being persistent. That's how they're going to mature and be ready to go on out and become productive citizens. It's very different from high school. And even the best students come in and they realize very quickly, wait a minute, this is a lot more challenging than I thought it might have been. And that's a good thing. That's a positive thing for them to address that challenge, assess it, and then with the help of others, or eventually on their own, move on and become, I've solved that problem, all right, I'm on to the next one. So teaching that independence and nurturing as they learn that independence is something we really pride ourselves on at CO. I'm the director of this first year seminar, and what that means is that we have 28 very dedicated faculty. We're going to be meeting with your students 4 days a week in that seminar. They're going to get to know them. In fact, tomorrow and starting tomorrow and Monday, they'll be meeting with each student individually for 15 or 20 minutes, getting to know them one-on-one. They will have a chance to review the academic record, so they know all the interests that the student may have, so they can right away from day one help to guide them, especially in this very, very important first semester of their experience. Find their tribe, find something that excites them, get them on the right path. And if they are not going to class, then we have a network in place to say, okay, what's the challenge, how can we help you? So we're really are teaching students to be self-directed, but we realize that they may not be, some students may have, I know my son relies on me a lot, I have to keep pulling back and not doing those little things that it's just more efficient sometimes for me to do. But they're learning how to live with other, maybe they haven't lived alone, with a roommate before. That's a huge challenge. They maybe haven't managed their time or had even select their own classes, because there's so many things that they're going to be doing on their own that you can help them do. Maybe your student has been accustomed, and most of them have, to working on another job. That's a balancing act, and certainly we respect them to do that. Either a work study job or off campus, but we are going to also be counseling them on finding that balance. Because really their full-time job right now is being a student. And that's sometimes very, very difficult for students to put that in their minds. Like, oh, I go to class, I don't even have to go to class as much as I did in high school. But there's all this free time. Wow, what do I do with this free time? So I usually sit down with my students and do a 24-hour schedule. Here are your 24 hours. Here's where you're doing class. Outside of class, you need at least 2 hours for every hour you're in class to do preparations. This is your job. Then there's time for your eating. You must eat, you must sleep. Socialize, yes. We want you socializing, getting connected. So they can see that they still have time for socializing, but a good part of that is their job is to be at school and be performing at the top of their game. So finding their niche, whether it's a team, in a play, in the fraternities, whatever it is, finding a place for them to settle in is what we're going to help them do as well. Now, they're going to be experiencing stress. That's just any new situation. So again, we have a support system in place. We're going to be hearing more about the camp leaders. They help them, staff mentors. We'll hear more of that discussed. And I'm going to turn it over at this point to my colleague Gina House Connect, who's going to talk more about all those support systems, especially in the Learning Commons.
So every student today, the day they set foot on campus, already has an individualized support network. The components of that support network today, at minimum, are a faculty member, the advisor, the instructor of the first year seminar is also their first academic advisor. Each of those first year seminars, what we call FYS, each of those seminars is assigned a staff mentor. These are staff people across the college who work in all different areas in college who have agreed to serve as a mentor for that FYS, for those 15 or so students in that class over the course of this year. Just another adult on campus who is going to be making a connection with your student and serve as someone who can help your student find out how to find and use their resources. And finally, assigned to every FYS is also CAP, the acronyms, a college adjustment peer. So that's the first student mentor that every student has. Most of those FYS classes will also have a writing center consultant. We have a student staff writing center, and a student writing center consultant will be is assigned to most FYSs. Now, some of your students have other members of their support network already. If they're on a fall team, even if they're on a spring team, they probably already know their coach, maybe some of the assistant coaches, maybe some of the students on that team, and they're also part of that network. We have cohort mentors who are other peer mentors. There are a number of other mentorship and coaching relationships available to your students that will be extended to some of them. And the other thing that your student is going to do over the course of the 4 years is build their own network. And that first set of mentors helps them do that, because we know that's one of the things that makes people effective, successful, and satisfied in the world, in the workplace, in their communities, is knowing how to connect with others, how to build a network of people who can help you get where you want to go. And we are well aware that your student is both for academics, but is also a human being, a whole full complement of needs, including social, health, otherwise. So we are really interested in your student as a whole person. I mentioned the different members of that first individualized support network. I want to call your attention to a couple of the areas of the college that are dedicated to student support. The Learning Commons provides all of our academic support services and resources. All of those are in the library. The Learning Commons and library are open until 1 o'clock today. So if you want to go by and just take a look and tour around and see where our tutoring center is, our accessibility services, a whole other host of services. I actually mentioned to a couple of you already this morning by self fanning yourselves that the air conditioning in the library is excellent. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. And then student development, which is located in Gage Union, which is where you all checked in, is that's the department in which we address social, residential, and wellness supports for your child. And Barbara's going to talk a little bit more about the Center for Creativity and Careers.
Thank you, Gina. As I mentioned earlier, College Degree Matters, and the Center for Creativity and Careers is another support system for your student. It exists to help students make informed decisions about their education, about how it connects with their life after co, about what they want to do with that piece of paper that they're going to end up with. I know from experience as a parent, I know when I went to college, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. We have lots of students coming in who aren't sure what they want to major in, aren't sure what that major might mean to them. That's part of why they're here. It's part of that exploration. And our center is really built to help them do that. So we will help students first years on up to help figure out, here are my interests. We'll sit down and talk with them. We have some interest inventories that we can use as tools. We've got lots of tools like that we can use if we really need to dig in and assess from the beginning. And sometimes it's just a matter of talking things through. We all come to where we are at because of who we know already in our lives. So your students know what you do. They know what your family does. But there's so many other things out there. As I mentioned, jobs are changing all the time. And the staff in the Center for Creativity and Careers knows that. They're attuned to what's going on in the world of work and what's going on in the employment arena and in graduate schools. We can help kind of build some foundation for exploring graduate school as an option. We have awesome faculty who know graduate programs inside and out, who can be a really strong resource if a student decides they do want to go on to graduate school. What does that look like? And what are some really good schools for what they want to study? But we really are passionate about a couple things within the Center for Creativity and Careers, and we are organized in a way that shows that. So we have the career piece where we are connecting students all the time, helping them figure out what jobs are out there, exploring those jobs by talking to people, by job shadowing, by doing internships, by networking with others. As Gina mentioned, building that network when they're here as a student will serve them as they're going into the world of work, and building that network continues. So we talk to them about LinkedIn, we talk to them about how to introduce yourself to people, and how to have conversations in networking situations. Isn't easy for students to do. It isn't easy for some adults to do. So we really offer a lot of opportunities for students to practice that in this kind of a safe zone environment. And we rely on our alumni a lot for that. We have over 4,000 alumni who live in the 40-mile radius of Cedar Rapids. So we have a lot of people who are interested, invested in helping students figure it out and know where to go. So that's the career piece. We also have our community and civic engagement. So when you go to college, one of the things we hope that we're building is a civically engaged student, a civically engaged person, so that you are going out into the world and you're voting and you know what's going on in the world, and you're passionate in doing things in the world. And so our community and civic engagement is around finding opportunities for those kinds of things, whether it be volunteering, whether it be service learning, whether it be other civic engagement kind of opportunities. That office is part of the Center for Creativity and Careers as well. And then we also have, my co-director is Andrea Kahn. She's on our faculty, so we have a faculty director who is looking for ways and building ways to create creativity and ways to be creative in terms of how a student can get some of those experiences. So maybe they don't have time to study abroad, or maybe they don't have time to even do a full internship. They might have time to do a project. They might have time to do some volunteer work and build on that. So we're really all about that scaffolding experiences too, so you can kind of test it out as a volunteer. Maybe that leads into an internship, things like that. So we do a lot of one-on-one advising through our office. We also do a lot of events on campus and some off, so that students can, again, engage with alumni throughout and other employers throughout their tenure.
I'm going to talk for a few more minutes. I want to leave you with some thoughts about how you can be our partners, yes, we're your partners, in having your student get off to a really great start in these pretty critical coming weeks and months. I want to share a few more thoughts with you, and then we'll have a little opportunity for you to share thoughts with each other, perhaps ask us questions. And I just want to add on to what Barb has said, to say as a faculty member how appreciative I am of the very strong relationships that her office has built with the Cedar Rapids community. The Co is incredibly well connected in this community, and is well regarded in this community in large part because of the work that Advancement and the Center for Creativity and Careers does. So we sort of have tentacles that go out into all areas of this community, which give your children a lot of platforms and interviews in which to explore and practice. Here's what I'm going to ask you. Here's what I'm going to really implore you. When Susan was talking earlier about the fact that college is hard and different than high school, one of the things that we hear over and over again from students in the first year is that they knew it was going to be hard, they had no idea how hard it was going to be. They knew it was going to be different from high school, but they really didn't know how. How would they know? And even if they're following older siblings, they're experiencing this for the first time on their own. They're changing. They're remaking themselves. The world is beginning to look really different. Encourage them to be resilient. Encourage them to trust this process. Encourage them not to get discouraged by the hard parts, but to the extent possible, let's try to help them understand that the hard parts are the important parts, right? So I really encourage you not to think about the challenges that your child is going to face in the coming weeks. And I'm not saying may face, I'm saying is going to face in the coming weeks. I encourage you to think about those challenges, not as obstacles, in the way of what they're doing in college, but to think of those challenges as what they are doing in college. Your student was admitted to Co, which means that your student did pretty well in high school. And I talk to a lot of students, and we have a lot of honest conversations, and they tell me that a lot of times they did really well in high school without working that hard. Now, some of them worked that hard, but not all of them. Not all of them were really pushed and really challenged. Some of them were at the top of their class, and that's just kind of what came easily to them. And they weren't being pushed to the place where academics was really hard, and they were really getting into things that they didn't know about and didn't know how to do. That's what we're here for. That's our job, is to take them to that place. So I work with a lot of students who are getting C's for the first time, who are failing tests and assignments for the first time, sometimes who are failing classes for the first time. And they need to understand how much that is part of what it means to be a deeply intellectually engaged person. And it does not mean that they're not good enough. It doesn't mean they're not smart. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't be here. It doesn't mean that college is not right for them. It means they're getting deeply, it means that they're being asked to get deeply intellectually engaged. I'm going to share some research findings with you, and you're going to think, was that the Center for Obviousness that conducted that research? There's a large body of evidence in higher ed that demonstrates that the more time spent studying and working on projects outside of class, the more time spent on academics outside of the classroom, the higher the grades and the higher the graduation rates. And I know it seems obvious, but if it was so obvious, everyone would graduate from college in 4 years with great grades, right? So you're going to help your students knowing that we are standing behind your students and pushing a little bit. You're going to help them to commit, and this is going back to what Susan said earlier, the difficulty sometimes of navigating all this independence. You're going to help them commit to their studies. And you're going to encourage them to seek help. There is also, as we are, constantly encouraging them to seek help. There is, again, a body of evidence, a large and convincing body of evidence that demonstrates that, again, higher grades and higher graduation rates correlate with the help-seeking behaviors. But I actually just want to pause for a minute to talk about why students don't necessarily run to the professor's office all the time, or run to the Learning Commons, or go to, dash over to the tutoring desk at the first sign of difficulty to sign up for a tutor, even though it's so easy to sign up for a tutor, and it's free and available to all students for all classes. And that is because, again, to go back to how your student got to Co, by being a good student, right, by being smart. And another theme that we hear so much from our students is that those help-seeking behaviors, they think when they come here, that asking for help marks them as not smart enough or not good enough. That those help-seeking behaviors in their mind are connected to failure. When in fact, the help-seeking behaviors are connected to success and excellence. So you have to help us get them to that place where they understand that. The Learning Commons, again, offers one-on-one academic coaching. It is the home for our tutoring, for our student-staffed writing center, our student-staffed speaking center. Off-campus study is located in the Learning Commons. Our National Fellowships Advisor works out of the Learning Commons. We have an at-large academic advisor on faculty, so you all have a primary academic advisor and your FYS instructor. We also have the at-large advisor to provide supplemental advising instruction if you want a second opinion or someone else to talk to, or if your advisor is not available for whatever reason. We really encourage you when you talk to your student this term, ask what they're learning. Ask what they're learning in their classes. Ask what's hard, ask what's challenging, what's new, what's interesting, what's different. If you don't mind, just hold off. Don't ask them about their grades. Ask them about their learning. We're trying to help connect them to the majors that are really going to suit their strengths, their talents, their interests. And a lot of times those majors are different than the major they think it's going to be in the way in. So I kind of encourage you maybe not to talk about majors right away, but again to talk about learning and interests. And not to ask what are you going to do with that major, because really any co-college liberal arts major, the question is, what couldn't you do with it? I promise you. Susan already spoke about the importance, the critical importance of setting aside time every day. So hard for young people with this unprecedented amount of independence to know how to manage their time effectively, how to set up those habits and routines that are in fact how work gets done. So to the extent that they can set aside time every single day for studying, that you wake up in the morning, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to wonder how am I going to get that paper written, because you know that there's time set aside for that. So those habits are really critically important. Again, they're going to be surrounded by a lot of excitement, a lot of new opportunities. we are going to do everything we can to encourage healthy lifestyles, to encourage plenty of sleep, healthy eating, regular meals, regularly spaced throughout the day, exercise, and not spending more time in front of the screen and on social media than absolutely necessary. I do want to say, for those of you whose students are planning on working off campus, again, this was mentioned earlier, we understand it. We understand the real financial pressures on sending your child to college. The more time they can spend on campus, the better. I really, really encourage limiting those off-campus study hours as much as possible, because what I see happening over and over again, I have students who are working 20, 25, 30, 35, more hours at off-campus jobs, and what's happening is they're actually not getting their college education. They're not taking advantage of what we have to offer. They're not spending enough time on their study. They're not learning enough in their classes. They're not connecting with their professors. They're not making use of their resources because they're spending so much time working off campus. I understand financial pressure is real. Let's see what we can do to keep that off-campus work to the minimum necessary. And again, we've talked about independence. Please help your student become independent, use their resources, work through their challenges, and to be thoughtful. And to be thoughtful about the obstacles that they're going to be facing. Help them not catastrophize. Help them keep a sense of perspective. When, and again, it's a when, not if, when the going gets rough this term. Help them keep a sense of scale, a sense of the importance of why they're here in the big picture, and not to get sunk in what's hard and weird and strange and unfamiliar and uncomfortable right in this exact moment, but to trust the process and know that the next moment is going to give way to another one, which is going to make clear what has been learned, what has been gained from that struggle, from that difficult moment. And know that CO is staffed by both faculty and staff across all of our areas who are deeply committed to student success. And as we said earlier, this is a highly individualized kind of college education. We are looking to see what your student needs and helping your student figure out what is her or his own path through this experience. We're really excited about getting started on that process. I'm going to pause there. I'm going to ask you to take a moment of reflection. I'm actually going to ask that we just reflect silently for a good 30 seconds. And I really just want you to sit with what we've been saying. I want you to sit with what you're thinking. And then share those thoughts in a few seconds. Questions for any of us, or for those of you sending your child off to college for the first time, questions for each other. Maybe those of you who have done this 2 or 3 or 4 times before have some words of wisdom for your fellow parents who are doing this for the first time. Questions or reflections? Yes, please.
Hopefully you can hear me. On my son's, he's a transfer student, so everything seems to be a little bit different. For
Yes.
him.
Yes.
And we didn't know what an FYS group was, but there's no contact person, there's no name, there's a time to meet with FYS, but that's about it. He doesn't know where to go or who it is.
Okay, so how many transfer parents are there here? Okay, let's chat. If there are any others, let's be sure to chat. The experience is a little bit different for transfer students, and we've been talking about the 4-year experience. Not for the transfer students. hopefully not for the transfer students. And by the way, we're very committed to that 4-year graduation rate. We love your students and we want them out of here in 4 years. We do have transfer orientation, and we do have an advisor for your students, so we'll make sure that you know who the contact person is. It's a different transfer orientation. Yeah. No, we're glad that you're here. We want you here. We want you to know about what CO is and what the resources are. But we do have a different orientation for the student, for the transfer students. So yeah, I'll connect you to those resources. All right, good, thanks. To be sure to grab me. Yes, please.
What are you seeing as the most common mistake the incoming freshman made?
Ooh, the most common mistake an incoming first-year student makes. Susan, Laura? That's a good question. Parents of students who are already in college?
Time management.
Yes, that's it, actually. I was thinking like, ooh, that's a complicated. Actually, time management is the answer. That is the biggest issue. That probably really is the biggest issue. And that's why I was kind of belaboring the point of the habits and the routines. And when, we keep talking about how independent they are and how much more time they have at their disposal than they ever had before, it is so much harder than it seems to figure out what to do with all those blocks of unstructured time. Yeah, it is one of the things that we talk about a lot in the Learning Commons. They will be getting some guidance about that through the first-year seminar, but we also, we're happy always. Any of your students can come to the Learning Commons for a one-on-one, and we can talk about schedule with them, and look at their syllabi and help them map out the term. But you are right, that's it. I would say time
They treat it like
management.
a job.
Say
They
it.
have to
Treat
treat
it.
it like a job, and they work between this time and this time,
Exactly.
and playtime and dinner is after.
Yep. Treat it like a full-time job. Treat it like a pretty demanding full-time job, and I see some other parents nodding. Yeah. Other thoughts? Yeah.
I would say a second, kind of a close second, would be not using resources. I think Gina mentioned this a couple times, that students who come to CO typically have done really well in high school, and it's just hard. It's hard to be able to ask for help, and a lot of our students feel like they need to be able to do it on their own, like it's a test. That they can do it on their own. I'm kind of speaking with my own children here too, that it's a source of pride that I'm going to do it all by myself. And we all know that we rarely do anything by ourselves, no matter who we are. So I think that's probably, from what I've seen both with students here and my own 2 children, just being able to use and being willing to seek help.
There's another question or comment. Yes.
Mine was actually more of a comment or a
Yeah.
thought. Going back in college way back when, this is much different for our kids today. Social media has been such a huge part of their lives, and their ways of connecting are via text, Snap. It's not Facebook, we know that. But it's very different. So I know there are many in here that probably have concerns with their own kids of how are they socially going to meet other people safely that's not via text, via Snap. So I'm curious on what might be put together, knowing that, as I'm sure you all do, how are these kids going to meet each other next month?
Great. Okay. I'm going to say very little about it before I put on the spot Ryan Iser, who is our student intern in parent programs, and he has worked with me and Barb all summer and done a really great job. And if today went well, if you liked anything that happened today, it's because of Ryan. But he's not responsible for any of the hiccups. Again, in terms of the parent programs, everything that went well with parent programs today is due to Ryan. So Ryan, to that question about how are students going to meet each other, how are they going to connect, how are they going to socialize, how is that going to happen in ways that are healthy, beneficial, yeah. I got that one?
Yeah. Okay, well,
I'd say the biggest thing is that you don't necessarily need to meet over social media on this campus. We're a pretty small campus, so everybody tends to know most people. I know so many people since I've been here. I'm a senior. I'm going to be a senior, like she said. And the biggest thing is your RAs. They do a lot of like group events with your floors, with the rest of the building and stuff like that. You learn people's names really fast. You learn your classmates' names really fast because you'll be working with them a lot. Smaller class sizes means you'll be working in groups. You get to know everybody real quickly. You sit with each other at lunch and dinner just because you see each other around. You say, hey, we have the same math class. You want to go to lunch and just talk about what happened in the last class. At least if you're me, I didn't understand everything. Another thing is just the campus has student activities committee, SAC. They do a tremendous job of getting students together in events like Cone Night at the Colonels, Cone Night at the Rough Riders, ice skating and stuff like that. You get out, you meet people. Sporting events are also a great way to meet people that you're not on social media doing it. I think the biggest thing though is your RAs, your CAP leaders, getting you associated with other groups across the campus. You learn that your first few weeks. You meet so many people. Some of them you won't talk to really again, but a lot of them you're going to have these long connections with because you had so many good memories in this first week of being a freshman. I still talk to my whole CAP group. I still talk to everybody I had on my floor. I see them all the time. We hang out and stuff. My RA is not my RA anymore, but he's still a really great friend because he helped me through my freshman year adjusting. So I guess that's what I got to that.
You know, both of those peer mentors, the RA, the resident assistant, and the CAP, the college adjustment peer is attached to the FYS. Part of what they're doing is they're really looking to see is every student on my hall in the case of the RA or in my CAP group in the case of the CAP, really looking to see, are they connecting? Because those connections are super, super important. That's at least two people who are really kind of laser honed on that, actually. Yeah. Good. Other questions or thoughts? Yes, please.
Are there any specific dates or times for tutoring for student athletes?
Specific dates or times for
Tutoring.
Oh, so the tutoring. I'm sorry. So yeah. So they'll go to, just give you all the nuts and bolts to sign up for a tutor. They go down to the tutoring desk in the Learning Commons, which is in the tutoring desk in the lower level of the library, and that's where they'll initially sign up. But then what they're going to do is they're going to use our online tutoring system to find a tutor and a time that works for them. So the tutoring is all done by students on their schedule. Now we do also have supplemental instruction for some of our science and math classes, and some of that is during the day and some of that is in the evening, and we're setting up those SI sessions to the extent possible to work around student schedules. So there's a specific section of Bio-SI, I'm really getting into the weeds here, but there's a specific section of Bio-SI which is specifically for to work around the football students' schedule, for example. So yeah, the tutoring, they'll just schedule it at a time that meets their needs. Yeah, good. Other questions or thoughts, please? Yes.
It's just following on what they were saying. I was a college athlete, and you really have to manage your time even more than a regular student or if you're a musician, because your time is even more limited of what you have to study. So you have to stay up on top of it, otherwise it will come back at you. Even if you're on a bus traveling from one school to this other school, you will be studying, and you can get through it just fine. You just have to keep going and make sure your schedule is up to date.
And the comment for those of you in the back who might not have heard is, if you're a student athlete, you're going to have a lot more demands on your time, and you're just really going to have to stay on it. And you're going to have to be very disciplined about using your time well. I will share with you that this is not true across the board. It's certainly not true of all individual students. This is aggregate data. It's not true of in every case by any means, but on average, this is an average. Co-student athletes, their grades are better in season than out of season. And I think it's because there is so much built-in structure there, and sometimes they're a little bit at sea. And Ryan, who is an athlete, is doing cross country now, Western Jack is nodding, right? So the other thing I want to share with you, I actually want to share one other data point. This is kind of a funny piece of information for me to share with you, but I think it's actually helpful because we don't really, I mean, we don't want to be talking to you about anything that could go wrong, right? Don't tell them anything that could go wrong. I want to tell you something, and this is not going wrong, but I want to circle back to the point that I made earlier about it's hard, it's different, it's challenging. Some of your students are going to be getting grades they've never gotten before, and they're going to be really appalled and shocked, and they're going to doubt themselves. This is again talking about aggregate data about student grades. Student grades go down. The GPA goes down from high school to college. It goes down. Very few of your students are going to get the same GPA in December that they had in high school. The average drop from high school to the first term at Co, the average GPA drop is half a point. From a 4.0 to a 3.5, from a 3.5 to a 3, from a 3 to a 2.5. That's average, right? So students who are doing really, 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 really well are likely to see their GPA go down. So I just want to emphasize for you again, that is not a cause for panic. That is not a cause for self-doubt. That is not a cause for, why aren't you working harder? I just really want to provide that context for you because I think it's really, really important context. Anything else? Other comments? Yes.
One question. What Paula mentioned when you were talking about problem, the resources. So a child would have any different issues. It could be social, health, studies, emotional. How do they find the right resource? Should they go to their RA or is it online? Because actually said sometimes it could be pride, sometimes the child could be just shy. They're not open, they're not sure where to go. And they're hesitant to ask. So where? What is the first resource like? How do they find that right resource?
So some of you, if you want to see this, there was a little chart when you checked in a parent orientation. There was this little multicolored chart, which is called something like "How to Find Your Resources," which actually lays out for every issue what office you contact. Now, the point of that individualized support network is that the point of it having so many different nodes, that there's a staff mentor, a faculty mentor, and one or more student mentors, peer mentors from the very beginning, is to make it easier, more likely that a student is willing to ask someone where to go for some kind of help, right? Because if it's just the professor, they may not want to ask the professor. If it's just the CAP leader, well, they might not click with that CAP leader. So that's why we're building in this whole support system, so they have a lot of people to ask. So everyone who's in that support network is very well acquainted with CODE's resources, and really what they're there for is to help connect your child to resources. The short version for anything that's social or health or wellness, the short version is student development, which is an upper gauge. The short version for anything that's academic is Learning Commons, which is in a library. And if it has to do with a class, go to your professor. But yeah. Okay, we are at time. There's going to be a 10-minute break for the next group, which is
Bookstore and financial aid.
Bookstore and Financial Aid and Business Office. And security. So feel free to stretch your legs and come back. We're all here. Thank you.